basically, we're going to be talking about what happened with Renee Nicole Good this last week in Minneapolis. If you have somehow not heard of what's going on and what happened, there was a massive ICE deployment in Minneapolis. Approximately 2,000 agents, I believe, were deployed to the city under the guise of cracking down on crime, getting the streets safe, the same narrative that we have heard through decades of failed tough on crime policies, that it has been the same song and dance. And there has been massive community resistance to ICE presence nationwide. We have seen it here in Tulsa. We have seen it in Los Angeles. We have definitely seen it in Minneapolis, Chicago, New York. All of these major cities have been pushing back on these ICE operations for months. And it was only a matter of time before something happened that happened this week. And I want to preface this before we start talking about Renee Nicole Good with the fact that this is not the first death that has occurred at the hands of ICE. It is, as far to my knowledge, one of the first point blank shootings that has happened, but there have been immigrants and, other citizens that have been, attacked, have suffered some sort of medical issue, that have died in ICE detention facilities. There is a list out there that I will try to remember to post on my socials later, because I do have it saved on my phone, that in 2025 alone, it was dozens of people that were killed at the hands of ICE. And so far in 2026, we are, 11 days in to this year, and there's already been 2 shootings. But Renee Nicole Good has obviously definitely dominated the headlines over the last few weeks, or the last few days, for, quite a few reasons that we're going to talk about. And um, there's a lot that I have to say that I want to be very particular about the way that I say it when we're regarding ICE. But first, we're just going to talk about the facts of what happened on the ground. So there has been a little bit of conversation about whether, Renee lived in the area, or if she was part of a rapid response ICE group. I know a lot of different areas have these, rapid response ICE, where, some activists will go out, make sure that they're recording, making sure that immigrants and people that encounter ICE are aware of their rights, so that we can document what these people are doing. Because when these people are coming into our communities, they're masked, and they're masked for a reason, because what they're doing is not okay. What they're doing is oppressive. It is outside the law in a lot of ways. It is extrajudicial. They are taking people without due process, without cause, holding them. Even U.S. citizens have been detained without access to a lawyer or a phone call, or any of the things that are constitutionally guaranteed, not just for citizens, but for all people in the United States. The Constitution does not say for citizens only, it says people. And so everybody is subject to our laws that is on our soil, and that you do not forfeit any rights just because you are here in an undocumented manner. That is a straw man argument that I'm really tired of seeing. ICE came into this community, and from what we have seen from witness accounts and the several video clips, ICE and her partner, or Renee and her partner, were in a vehicle that was blocking the road. From what I have heard, Renee was trying to make a U-turn to get out of the situation. And you can see in the one bystander video that she waves several vehicles on, and you can hear a lot of yelling, a lot of chaos, because we had officers that were telling her to leave the scene, to drive off, to leave. You also had ICE agents that were yelling and telling her to get out of the vehicle. So this is a scene that is chaos, and this is something that I've talked about as a veteran. I haven't had any experience really in law enforcement, except for like 15 years ago. I worked at a jail for a hot minute whenever I was like 21. But this lack of training and lack of actually ICE knowing what the fuck they're doing is what led to Renee's death, because there's not clear communication on the ground. There's not clear operating procedures of what they should be doing. So imagine that you are a person who is not trained in any type of scenario, law enforcement, and all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of masked men with guns yelling at you, conflicting things. Obviously, the natural response for most people that aren't trained for these type of scenarios, is fight or flight. And I think we can see very clearly from all of the videos that the response was flight. So you see Renee begin to make like a 2 or 3 point turn, tires turned away from Jonathan Ross, who is the agent that murdered her. And as she begins to go, you can see from his cell phone evidence that he was holding the phone with his right hand. As he goes in front of the vehicle, he switches his phone to his left hand to be able to draw his weapon. So he knew that he was going to draw his weapon as he's crossing the path of the vehicle, steps a little bit outside, feet are not in front of the tires, and fires the first shot through the window. At an angle, you can see that the tires are turned away from his feet. First shot goes through the windshield, not at a direct angle, but you can tell that it is from the side of the front quarter panel angle. As she continues to drive, he then shoots 2 more shots through the open window, point blank into her face, and then says the words "fucking bitch." And then very slowly, as she loses control because she had just been shot in the face and wrecks into other car in the telephone pole, and her vehicle comes to a stop, he very slowly walks over to the car, then turns around and gets into his vehicle. And I believe he did leave the scene of this incident. So that is what we have seen, and then a couple hours or the next day, videos from Renee's partner came out where Renee's partner was outside of the vehicle. And, she was saying some things to ICE about getting out of there. She was saying stuff about how they are changing their plates. And what I think this is a clear indicator of is a little bit of well, not a little bit, a lot of male fragility here. That 2 queer women were heckling and were talking to him and upsetting him, undermining his authority, and he could not handle it because there was no attempt at any de-escalation. It is a violation of the actual policies of DHS to discharge your vehicle into a moving vehicle, especially if there is a safe way for egress, which there was, considering he was not actually in front of the vehicle. So then we see the reaction of the wife, but then the main point that we're going to come around when we talk about this is the narrative that we are seeing from the Trump regime. So immediately, Christine Ohm comes out and labels Renee as a domestic terrorist, as an agitator, saying things that she had hit and ran over this ICE agent. Donald Trump echoed the same things. I believe he put something on True Social that he was hit and pinned and was fighting for his life in the hospital, was lucky to be alive. We can see from the evidence, the video evidence, clearly that is not true. Everything that we are seeing with our own eyes are contradicting the narrative that we are getting from our own government. J.D. Vance then proceeded to have a press conference where he had a complete temper tantrum, to be honest, and was pretty much just spouting the Twitter narrative of the far right bots and misinformation factories that we see over there on Twitter, and labeling Renee as a domestic terrorist, and lots of very dehumanizing language, insinuating that she deserved what happened to her. And it is a mess. So in a normal functioning society, in a world, even if you are being governed by a political party that is different than you, the normal response would be to say, it is an unfortunate situation that a loss of life occurred, but we are going to let the investigation play out and see. And that is not what we're seeing. Nothing that this administration does is precedented or normal, or anything that is not completely batshit crazy. So we are seeing this divisive language and inflammatory language, and I am very, very concerned with the ongoing presence of ICE. We're seeing state and local governments that are condemning these actions and wanting ICE out of their cities, and the federal government is refusing to comply. And I think if you know anything about right-wing politics, their whole thing is small government and local control. So it is, to me, a very calculated maneuver to be deploying ICE to this magnitude in these cities. And it was only a matter of time before this happened. And unfortunately, I do not see the temperatures being turned down. I am proud at all of the protesters that have been out on the streets and are raising their voices against this. But we have a whole lot to talk about. So I just wanted to kind of set that. Is there anything that I left out in the kind of just what happened on the ground? Nope. All right.
No.
We are good. So I've got a whole bunch of notes here, and we're gonna scroll through to make sure that I don't go. So let's see. We already talked about what Christy Nome has been talking about. Now, the one thing that I think I wanted to add to this conversation, because nothing we can say or do will bring her back. I think that it is very, very important that all American citizens that are against what is happening with the Trump administration, that is against what is happening with this rise of fascism in the United States, understand that the deployment to these cities by these hundreds and or thousands of ICE agents being deployed into these cities, it is not an accident. It is not about safety, and it's honestly not even about immigration. That is the easy excuse that they're able to say, of course, that crime and drugs and all of these things are all occurring because of the brown people, because of the immigrants, and therefore we need to deploy all these forces into these cities to keep us safe. And that is not true. There is a far more nefarious reason for ICE to be in these cities, and I think that we're seeing it now that ICE has started to show so much aggression towards US citizen that this is essentially Trump's little shadow army. And we've kind of known that that's what it was. And, I have seen a lot of conversation about, I find it very interesting that we haven't seen any Patriot Front and Proud Boy rallies quite as frequently since ICE has been mobilized and their standards were lowered and their recruitment efforts were ramped up, and they were given, $80 billion in a budget to militarize against their own citizens. But it is kind of one of those things of you never see Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana in the same room. There's a reason that you're not seeing a lot of these far-right extremist, white supremacist, terrorist, domestic terrorist groups and ICE agents in the same room, because in my opinion, they are one and the same. And that is why they are keeping their faces covered. That is why they are terrorizing citizens. And I think that a lot of what ICE is, the presence in ICE in cities, I believe, is a strategic, and this is my opinion. Obviously, this is something that I cannot, but I say it with the authority of being educated in social movements and having a pretty good grasp on politics and especially international policy. But I do believe that the ICE presence, this killing, it is connected to Venezuela. It is connected to the U.S. aggression that we've seen over there. I did make a video on my campaign TikTok, if you have not seen it, about the trade between China and Venezuelan oil. So China is actually the largest receiver of Venezuelan crude oil exports. And so when the United States comes in and is attempting to take control over this natural resource of this sovereign nation, Venezuela, this is not about Maduro. This is not about dictatorship. This is all I'm talking about right now is oil, because I know a lot of people like to throw out the logical fallacies when we talk about this. But obviously, China, if anybody has seen China's statements that are condemning the U.S. aggression in oil, it is giving a proxy war scenario. And I truly believe that by having ICE in such a heavy presence, particularly in the big cities that have had a historical showing of public dissents and mass protests. This is strategic posturing. This is a intent. This is intended to intimidate citizens and scare them from being out on the streets, because we now have not only the police force that we've had to worry about from the past, over policing and overreacting to protests and escalating violence, but now we have a very untrained federal, just rogue paramilitary group of Trump loyalists. Because let's put it this, I mean, there's nobody joining ICE right now that is not a MAGA loyalist. And I can't say that, but I cannot see any person trying to join this army that is actually opposed to what we're seeing in our country and seeing this creep of fascism and authoritarianism. And you have to be able to have a militant arm to do what you want. Trump has tried to rally the military, the United States military, and different branches of the military, the Marines, which we saw with Hegseth and bringing all of the generals in. But the United States military, for all of its faults, is very famously apolitical and does not ever meddle in the affairs of domestic politics. Because Trump is not able to weaponize the military in the way that I believe he wishes he could, we now are seeing the resources, taxpayer money, that is being funneled to this essentially group that is terrorizing communities, because immigrants are what builds our communities. They are what keep us strong. And it is a civil issue. If somebody is here undocumented or is going through the process or came and sought a refugee status and is waiting for a court date, that is all civil matters. None of that is criminal. And whenever this was brought to the public, that we were only going to be going for after the murderers, and we were only going to be going after the worst of the worst and the drug dealers and these horrendous people to keep our communities safe. I mean, we're very, very clearly, it's very obvious that is a blatant lie, because we are seeing everyday people being pulled from work. We are seeing people being pulled from court appointments. And so if the idea is come here and do things the right way, then we wouldn't be going into courtrooms and pulling people and arresting them that are doing things the right way. I want people to really sit and reflect on this. Because if you are somebody that is in the streets protesting, you need to be aware that this is a possibility, that if you are in a city that has a large ICE presence, that they will be mobilized against you under the guise of immigration, and they are talking about going door to door. I think that the historical parallels of this and Hitler's brown shirts is not hyperbolic. I think that it is a very clear comparison to what we saw over there. And I have been wanting to talk about one thing, that every time we see something like this, and something with a shooting such as Renee Nicole Good, which is absolutely tragic and it's absolutely horrendous. This is a mother, this is a poet, this is a community member. She had just moved to Minneapolis because she was in a queer relationship and wanted to be around like-minded people and be in a safer space. And her death was absolutely tragic and appalling. But I do have to gently point out the fact that this type of situation has been happening to Black and brown women for not only centuries, not only decades, but for centuries. And this scenario, whether it's local police or ICE, of these unjust killings, brutal murders by state officials and state officers, law enforcement officers, agents, federal agents, whatever you want to call them. This is something that is not new. And I do understand that when something like this happens to a white person, it does hit white people a little bit different if you haven't really felt as if this is something that'll affect you. Because we can read headlines about people of color and be, oh, okay, well, that's sad, but there's something that changes in you when you realize that your privilege will not actually protect you. And I want to make sure that we're being very, very clear when we talk about Renee Nicole Good that this is absolutely tragic and it is absolutely horrific, but it is not outside of the norm of what has been occurring to Black and Brown communities throughout all of American history. And that's something that we need to be very aware of. And that's something that as a white person, you need to be able to sit with and understand that if you are truly going to stand on the right side of history, and if you are truly going to stand against state repression in a way that actually matters and threatens the status quo, you will not be safe. You will not be protected because of your privilege once you decide to stand against the oppressor. You will now be considered in the same way that the state has viewed minorities all of this time. Um, so yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of just a breath so that I don't lose my train of thought over here. Sarah, did you have anything to add on that point?
Well, I think the other thing that is being missed a lot in a lot of these conversations is this isn't the first time they've murdered someone.
Mm-hmm.
The first person they killed was a man named Silvero Gonzalez. He was undocumented, so that creates a different storyline as an undocumented person. But it doesn't change that they are willing to murder somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also shot another woman, Miramar Martinez. She was a U.S. citizen. They claimed that she rammed their cars and threatened them with a semi-automatic weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Which forced them to shoot her. And yeah, but the reality is that she didn't have a gun, she didn't threaten them, and she was taken by ambulance, which they have body cam footage that shows all of that and showing that officers were okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that the story that they put out is just ridiculous. And the question here is, are the explanations we're hearing about this and other activities that ICE is engaging in, whether it's shootings or excessive use of force or anything like that, does it match the evidence, or are they trying to reframe reality before the facts come out and before the media picks up the bits and pieces? Because now they're also keeping local agencies from doing investigations. They are not doing investigations. They're kind of just sweeping things under the rug. And so they change the narrative. They spew all of this stuff. And this is the tactic. Whoever gets the story out first, that's the story that people believe. So they run to a press conference and they spew a bunch of bullshit that is blatantly false. And there is so much evidence to show that it is false, that they are standing in front of a camera behind a podium. The vice president of the United States stood behind a camera in front of press and just spewed hate and lies. And all of this has been disproven. And nobody is being held accountable. And everybody just takes whatever they say as scripture, pun intended there. They take it as scripture and then try to say that the videos that are coming out, that the evidence that is coming out, that all of us are crazy, that it's fake, or all of this stuff, because they don't want to face the truth. They don't want to be held accountable, and they think they're above the law. And I think that is one of the most important things here is they think that they are above the law.
That's an excellent point. And not to nerd out a lot on like academic, but there is a term for the world that the world is in right now, but especially the United States. There's an academic term called post-truth society. So just sit with those words, post-truth society, that we have essentially for the last decade, since 20. I mean, we can say since the first Trump administration, but we can trace it back probably to like the last few years of the Obama administration. And once kind of misinformation started to really ramp up, we saw this happen with Brexit, and, interference and social media actually showing how much it was able to influence civic engagement and social opinions. And it has absolutely exploded over the last 10 years with the misinformation and disinformation. So we are living in a time where there can be an actual reality that is empirical, it is based in fact, it is something that you can see with your eyes, it is a thing that exists, and yet there can be a narrative that is like, no, actually that's not true, sounds fake, but for some reason it is given the same, it is treated as if it is a difference of opinion, it is treated as if it is a difference of ideology, or if it's just two sides. Even the media, even legacy media, will take the misinformation and disinformation and frame it in a way that it's like they kind of say that it is, but it legitimizes it. And so, and especially when you have heads of state, especially when you have the president and the vice president coming out with just blatant lies, and then they have their own media machines with Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and all of the America First or whatever, and then the Twitter machine, it does legitimize. And I think you're absolutely correct that it was there was no reason. Kristi Noem got in front of cameras so fast, not fast enough to have known anything about what the fuck happened, anything at all, and immediately went with we heard that there was a ICE involved shooting. We will be reviewing it and conducting investigation, and we'll update as soon as we know more, which is what we have seen from, decades of leaders and officials from the local to the national level. When something like this happens, they say, okay, this happened, we're going to learn more, and we'll update you. That is how it's always been. But now it is exactly as you say. It is, what is our narrative? What spin are we going to put on it? What lies are we going to tell? And then just get it out there as fast, blast it on every place, see if we can meme the shit out of it, see if the bot farms pick up on it. And then eventually you have half of the US population falling for it. Mm-hmm. And what do we do? I don't even know how you even go against a machine of people that refuse to live in the reality that we actually live in, and instead choose to live in just a fake made up story time that makes themselves feel better.
Yeah.
Because it makes them feel better to think that she's a domestic terrorist. There's a reason they use that word. There's a reason they use emotionally charged language like a domestic terrorist, an agitator, and radical.
Domestic terrorist
organization. Yes, they are. Actually, because they're funded by our tax dollars and they're terrorizing people. Yeah. But it is it's heavy emotionally charged language to dehumanize people, to make them support it, and to say that this is not similar to how we saw Hitler's rise to power in the Weimar Republic it's asinine. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you're not supposed to let's not compare people to Nazis. Why you're doing Nazi shit? I'm going to say that you're acting like a Nazi. I don't know why you wouldn't call it for what it is and call it out. So
you mentioned, talking about the whole above the law thing, let's quote rule. Let's quote the rule. Firearms may not be discharged at moving vehicles unless the vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical injury to the officers or others, and no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist.
Yeah. And just based on those videos, I feel like stepping 6 inches to the right is a means of defense. You could just not step in front of the vehicle if you don't want to be hit by a vehicle. And so this is against their own protocols. This is against their own their own operating procedures. And I've seen many law enforcement officers like, never did I 2020 Erica would have never thought that I would be so supportive of so many police departments that have come out so vehemently against this. And the law enforcement officers that have had decades and decades of experience that are like, this is like rookie cop shit right here, that you do not shoot into a moving vehicle.
And this guy isn't a rookie cop. He's been
Yeah.
with them for
10 years.
For 10 years. Yeah.
And so,
as a federal officer,
and that
not
is,
including any prior law enforcement experience.
I mean, I just, I feel like, I think that they are being, the ICE agents are being almost framed to, not framed, but they're being manipulated into viewing U.S. citizens as the enemy, and we're not. So yes, he did lift the scene. So, thank you for the comment over there on TikTok, because that's what I thought. I thought I had seen from the first one that he left the scene. But yeah, that should be something that we know that we're not going to do. So I mean, so if we have these people operating with immunity, in our, because there are a lot of people that are saying there should be absolute immunity, and even if you're driving away and you're not hitting somebody, that you deserve to be shot. So we're now just completely disregarding any type of due process of law. We're thinking that ICE agents get to be the judge, jury, and executioner.
Literally.
And what is that going to look like for our country? What is this going to look like in 3 years if we don't do something to stop it? So there is a couple other comments, but I did have let me skip past them. Did have some call to actions of what we can do about it, because I do have some people in here. So immediately, what needs to happen, of course, is still showing up. If you are seeing protests in your area, you need to be going out. You need to be hitting the streets, and I do believe that mass public resistance will help. It is a very fine line, because I 100% can say that I believe that the Trump administration is just waiting for a riot. That is what they want. They're waiting for somebody to throw the first brick. And there's definitely evidence that in past situations, there have been right-wing people that have infiltrated peaceful protests and have antagonized violence. So you need to make sure that you are being safe and aware if you are at protests, that you know and trust the organizers, and that if there are people that are around trying to insinuate that we should be becoming violent with no provocation over anything, not talking about self-defense or anything, but I'm talking about that is 100% something that is what is going to play into the hands of this administration. They are itching, they are begging for this to happen. They have been trying to bait this for the last year. I 100% believe that as soon as Trump was inaugurated, what did we see in Washington, D.C. like a week or two later? We saw huge construction equipment coming out in the middle of the day in Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C., which actually had Black Lives Matter it was concreted into, with yellow concrete, the words into the street for about a block and a half, and construction equipment digging it up. They have been doing things to try to bait people out into the streets because they're itching for this, and we don't want to give them what they want. What we do need to do is make sure that we are still building this rapid response infrastructure. We need to be able to have the networks that are actually plugged in, that in a lot of communities are doing it. If you don't know, it's an easy way to find. If your community, you can look on Reddit, you can look on Discord, you can look on some of the other social medias. But there are rapid response so that you can go out. There are ICE whistles to make sure that you are bringing attention, make sure that every single person out there is videoing. That is what we're able to do. They do want to Tiananmen Square. So that is what they want to do. But you definitely need to be supporting the community's needs as well. So if you know undocumented people in your community, start doing grocery deliveries, arrange for grocery deliveries and for things like that to make sure that to protect these communities. If you do have privilege, we did see what happened. You need to use to protect the vulnerable communities if you do have privilege, because although we have clearly seen that being white will not save you, it will. It is, a little bit less of a statistic if they're going to be aggressive to an all white crowd versus a crowd of color. Other things that you really need to do is be pressuring your local representatives and look into the 287G contracts that are in your city and state. See how those contracts are negotiated. I know in Tulsa, it is the county commissioner's office that negotiates those contracts for the ICE holds with the jails, which, by the way, they're violating a whole lot. So you need to be pressuring your local officials to have non-compliance. Some cities are now coming out and saying they will not cooperate with ICE. They want ICE out of the cities. You need to see that your city government will actually stand and protect the citizens and the members of this community against this federal aggression. So you need to be pressuring these local city councils, local county commissions, whoever, your mayors, your local lawmakers, all the way up to the federal. And if you are unfortunately like somebody in Oklahoma that has federally very, very red, very MAGA leadership or representatives, you still need to contact them, even though they're not gonna listen. But we need to make sure that we are trying to lobby our representatives. If you are lucky enough to have a progressive representative or a Democratic representative that has spoken out against ICE, we need to start making sure that there is a congressional accountability, that there needs to be congressional investigations into this ICE. Every fucking ICE agent that has every single one of them needs to testify in front of Congress, especially if they have been part of some where there's been loss of life or excessive use of force. They need to testify. The leaders and the superiors and their advisors need to be testifying in front of Congress as well. We need to make sure that we are getting it. If we can't get it locally, we can get a federal ban on the masks. All federal agents should not be allowed to wear masks. If you are too scared to show who you are to do the job, then maybe you are in the wrong fucking job. Okay? That definitely, and we need to make sure that the municipal agencies, especially places like Minneapolis, that they are able to conduct actual investigations and hold these people accountable. Otherwise, this is going to keep happening, because if we let this slide, it will keep happening. Did I miss anything else on that? Because I kind of just, let's see.
I mean, I think that one of the things that you said about they are waiting for someone to throw the first, brick, basically. Yeah. I disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think they're waiting on it. I think they are intentionally doing things to incite something. It's not sit around and wait for somebody. It is push it as far as we can.
Yeah.
So that it blows up and then we get to point fingers at somebody that's not us.
Yep.
We are in an election year.
Mm-hmm.
It is all about power. It is all about control, and it is all about money.
Mm-hmm.
And, there has to be an enemy.
Yeah.
So, and they don't want to be the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to make somebody else the enemy. And right now they are making communities undocumented, and even people who have been here legally, showing up to court for their appearances just to renew their permits, their green cards. They're arresting them in those situations. Those individuals are following the law. They are here legally. And because the federal government has created so much bureaucratic red tape and demonized people that don't look like them, they are snatching them. Families, children, everything. And they are doing it with the intention of creating drama so that, number one, it gives the American people an enemy. So we are focused on this fabricated enemy over here so that we are not paying attention to all of the insane fucking bullshit that they are doing to us.
Yep.
Not just about this stuff.
Yeah.
All of the insane bullshit they are doing to us. And it is an election year. And if they can keep our focus on the drama and the chaos, they can continue to pass bad policy.
Yep.
They can continue to control the narrative. And if we just sit around and do nothing, if we don't show up on election days, if we don't, you know how I feel about protests. Like a lot of protests, you go to a protest and then there's
And then what?
and then what?
Yep.
And then what? I am not saying that protests are bad. I mean, we can see from the last 100 years and more how protests change policy, but it takes time. But the difference is that the difference between the civil rights movement, the protests that are happening in the civil rights movement, and the protests that are happening today. And I'm not talking about just about this issue. I'm talking about generally the protest community, the mindset is we're going to go out, we're going to take a megaphone and hold up a homemade sign, and we're going to yell and scream for a couple of hours, and then we're going to go back home.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't go knock doors, or I can't do this, or I can't do this to support the community because I have to go home and be in my cozy, comfy space. Well, we're too focused on being in our cozy, comfy spaces. We're literally losing our cozy, comfy spaces. So when is it going to affect?
Well, and the thing is
do something?
The protests, and this is purely educational, not a call to violence. But in the past, the protests have been they have been riots. They have been what would be deemed riots, and they have been things that actually push back against the systems. Like, when our whitewashed version of history is like, oh, Rosa Parks sat at the front of the bus, and then she went to jail, and then all of a sudden there was equality. No, there was massive riots, and then there was a year plus long strike of the Montgomery bus system that was literally plummeting the city into debt because they weren't getting the fares from the Black community, because Black organizers actually know how to organize and get the community together. And so when an entire community is like, actually, you know what, we're not going to participate in this, then it actually affects change. And that is why 2020 had so much police presence and so much pushback from the state, because historically the Black-led protests have been the ones that's actually, when you have a lot of these, these white-led protests that come out, and we're wearing our costumes, and we're doing our signs, and we're getting our Instagrams, and we're getting our hashtags, but we're making sure we're staying on the sidewalk, and we're not going to step on the grass, because if we're on the grass, and that could be, and all of this stuff, and we're only permitted until this time, and so we're all not going to go. They know that that's not threatening. So the people that are, in power, they look at the things, even the massive, yes, of course I am impressed by the turnout of the No Kings marches, and millions and millions of people coming out on the street. But the people in power, they look at that and they're like, oh, all those people are on the street. What are they going to do? Nothing. They're going to go home. Are they going to start, withholding their labor? Are they going to start boycotting companies? No, because unfortunately the system has been designed to make it nearly impossible.
Are they going to stop voting for us?
Yeah. That part too.
Because we saw that, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
2014, the education protest at the Capitol that garnered 25,000 people in attendance.
Yes.
Complaining about public education issues in the state, complaining about, lack of transparency, lack of accountability in our state government. And then what happened?
Yeah.
We elected the same fucking people.
And then guess what happened?
We were up there protesting, and they just got reelected, including a legislator from Wagner County who demonized teachers on video.
Yep.
On a video. He demonized and called, I can't remember exactly what it was that he said, but he basically called them pieces of trash. Yeah. Please don't quote me on that, because it's not the actual, but that was the
well, and with the education protests, it wasn't just a 25,000 teachers protesting at the Capitol. It wasn't that all these teachers, 25,000 teachers, went on a Saturday and protested. They went on strike, and they were at the
School
Capitol
districts shut down the entire
for
district.
what was it like? It was several
They shut
days,
school
like
district,
4 or 5 days.
it was one day. School districts shut. There were a number of school districts,
Yeah.
especially like the larger ones.
Yeah, they shut it
that
down.
shut down the entire
So
district so that parents, teachers,
Mhm.
students, families, the community, and then they provided, the districts even provided transportation on district buses
but then what
to go to the
happened?
Capitol.
as you said, that
Nothing
happened.
changed.
We voted the same motherfucking people in, and
Including
then
the
they
one that
passed
demonized
legislation that made it illegal for teachers to strike.
Yeah.
So if you do not think that even your local elections matter, that they are not stripping away your rights even at the smallest level, that is like something I want to scream about. And if you know me, you know that I also have been an organizer. So I exist in some leftist spaces. And then, of course, running for office, I'm in these spaces. And one thing that I like to say is do not be so revolutionary that you do not think that voting doesn't matter, but don't be so moderate as to say that voting is the only thing that matters. It is
Correct.
the layers of it.
Correct.
Of course, just voting is not going to make this all better. There has to be a lot, but voting is definitely something from the ground up that we can do.
But that is the difference between what is happening now with the
Mhm.
protest mentality versus what happened in with the civil rights movement. That was organized. They had goals. They
Mhm.
had demands. We have nothing. And part of the reason that we have nothing is because everybody wants to be in charge of their own thing and they
Mhm.
don't want to work with somebody else.
Yeah.
One group over here wants to run the show and they want to get credit. And then group over here wants to run the show and they want to get credit. And then group over here wants to run the show and they want to get credit. There's no consistency, there's no unification, and there is no plan, there's no goal. We go out and we say no kings, which is great, but what now? No kings, but what? What
Exactly.
do we want?
Yeah.
What do we want?
Yeah.
We haven't been answering that question and we haven't been
Yes.
telling them what we want. We're
Mhm.
just screaming at each other
Yeah.
about how terrible it is.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not, there is, if you're going to organize a protest and it needs to be, if you're in, hey, Congressional District 1 and you're organizing one of these big protests, it needs to be, hey, Kevin Hearn, we're going to vote you out.
Right.
Hey, Kevin Hearn, we're going to vote you out. Start like trying to find some of the Republicans that aren't MAGA to be like, hey, you guys work on primarying him, and if you don't primary him, then we'll make sure that we get somebody like Erica Watkins in over Kevin Hearn in the general, right? But it would be hilarious if a lot of these incumbents started, and because that is one thing that the far right is really, really good at doing. Moms for Liberty, haven't talked about them in a while because nobody's really heard from them, but that's how I kind of got my start in this, was being kind of the opposite voice to Moms for Liberty. They're not loud and they're not center stage and in the news as much anymore, but they are still active,
Very active.
AF in Oklahoma politics, even to this day, in that Moms for Liberty and a lot of these very, very fringe right-wing groups, and they might not agree on all of the things, but you got Moms for Liberty that is education. You have Oklahoma 2A that is, so pro 2A that it's insane. And then you have these other groups that are the, anti-wind farm and that are against all of this. And the white supremacist groups, the Christian nationalist groups, like the city elders and OCPAC and all these groups that want to see that, they all work together and communicate, and they put pressure on their Republican representatives. And that is how we have even some rational Republicans making really, really bad votes in our state legislature, because these grassroots groups are coming together and they're writing letters that have like 20 organizations signed on that are well funded and well organized and turn up to vote. And they know that they show up and they turn up to vote. And then so they get this letter. They're like, if you don't vote this way on this thing, then we're going to primary you. And all these representatives care about is keeping their seats. But the right or the left does not have that same organizational to push back, because there are even Democrats, not in Oklahoma, but nationwide, that have been praising ICE or that have been silent about ICE, and they're still getting elected as well. And so there needs to be definitely a conscious effort and more civic engagement, because we would not be in this place if we didn't have these assholes in these seats. But unfortunately we do. But when we only have 40 something % of the voting population show up to vote, this is what happens, because it's the same extremists time and time and again that actually show up to the polls. That's the only people they care about, and their donors. So, yeah.
Yeah. So very quickly, you
Mhm.
mentioned that you're going to the Broken Arrow
Yes.
meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
So, for anybody that doesn't know about that, so that is in your district. Number one, Broken Arrow is in your
Yes.
district, is in District 1,
Yes.
because it's in Tulsa County
Yes.
and part of Wagner County, and that part of BA is, or no, BA's, no, never
Yeah.
mind. Yeah, just Tulsa County. I'm thinking
Yep.
of Coweta. But here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people know. It's not just the group wants to build a mosque. They already own that land.
Yeah.
They already own that land.
Yeah.
It's their property. And so now all of this stuff and all of this outrage, and now you've seen what the Attorney General has done now. The Attorney General who's running for governor, that which I have to personal moment here. I am very disappointed in the direction that Drummond has gone, because just a couple of years ago, he told me to my face at an event that one of his favorite things was to hold Kevin Stitt accountable for his bullshit and put him in his place and watch little Stitt boy have his public meltdowns. And that made me so happy, because, it makes me so happy when Democrats hold other Democrats accountable and when Republicans hold other Republicans accountable.
Because we should.
And I really thought that is the type of person that he was. And I am so, so, so incredibly disappointed. Now, granted, I wasn't going to, vote for him
Right.
in either scenario. But how disappointing is that for him to have like this complete 180 from I am going to hold other people in my own party accountable.
Yeah.
And then now he is
just full-blown MAGA.
Just full-blown MAGA. Full-blown. When he was talking against that just a couple of years ago, but now that he's running for governor, he needs to kiss ass to all of the MAGA Republican voters. And so he just does whatever is politically expedient for him.
Yeah, he does whatever the base wants. And so the base gets their little Fox News headlines and their algorithmic echo chamber stuff that they get from Twitter and their Facebook groups, and that's what they base it on, not on fact. And that circles back to just that. Yeah, it's disgusting. I mean, freedom of religion exists, and there is no reason for a mosque to not. If there is the Muslim community in Broken Arrow that needs it, they should be able to build it. It is their land, and it is absolutely disgusting. And I'm appalled by some of my fellow Oklahomans that the things that they have been saying, and just the ignorance and the xenophobia, Islamophobia that they are spouting about this. And I will be at the meeting, and I have put in the form to speak. So we'll see if that happens. I do not live in Broken Arrow, but as somebody that is running to represent that community, hopefully I will be able to speak at it.
But it's not just about the Broken Arrow community. No. It is about the community that exists around Broken Arrow. It is about everybody that lives in Tulsa. This affects everybody that lives in this part of the state and in this state, because it sets a precedent.
Yes.
It sets a precedent on what we are willing to accept, the narratives that we are willing to accept, the lies that we are willing to sweep under the rug and either accept or pretend like we didn't hear it or just flat out ignore it. And it gives them the idea or the feeling that they can do whatever the fuck they want. And it is wrong. And circling all the way back, coming full circle, what would he do if an ICE agent murdered somebody in this state? Is Gettner Drummond gonna launch an investigation? Fuck no.
Nope. So your governor does not care about you.
And your Republican gubernatorial candidates don't either.
Yeah.
And not just Drummond, all of them, including former Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Charles McCall.
So, so tomorrow there will be that meeting in Broken Arrow. We'll be there. We'll probably try to stream. And then I'm going to do one other little plug, and then we're going to go to some of the questions because TikTok has been popping off.
Yeah.
Popping. So I will put it over here. This is a book that we got on little pre-release. I forgot to bring your copy. Sorry. Escape from Capitalism by Claire Mattei, who is a dear friend of mine that I met through the work that she is doing to expand some discussion about different alternative thoughts of economics right here in Tulsa. And they had a inaugural conference last year that brought in professors and academics and global, economists and people from all over the world were flown in, and it was 2 days of great. And now she is doing every month-ish, they do a panel that brings in experts about different issues, whether it's food insecurity or housing affordability. There is one on February 1st that Mayor Monroe Nichols will be speaking at, that I will be there as well. But Clara will be on this podcast next week. So we're going to set the room up. And I have been going through this book. It's great so far. And we will be talking about her new book, talking about how that kind of ties into, because this is for all my little radicals out there. Because this is challenging our economic system of capitalism, and we can be adults and we can look at how it came about, how it has changed and warped and has grown into being exploitative to the working class and is only benefiting like a handful of people. There are 3 people in the United States that hold more wealth than the bottom 150 million. And, little things like that. And let's actually have some grown-up conversations about how we can make our society better for everybody, what we can actually do, real life things, because we're not going to just quote some theorists from the 1800s and hold it, treat it like the Bible. We're going to exist in the reality that we are in 2025 and have these discussions that unfortunately, the reason that shit like this keeps happening with everything with ICE is because we're not able to sit down and talk about this and to look up at the people that are benefiting from us fighting and from all of the craziness that we're seeing constantly. So I did want to plug that next week we will have our first guest on the podcast. So I am super, super excited for that. I'm going to go ahead and hop off this stream over here because Facebook is just not turning up today. So good night, Facebook. I'm going to stay on TikTok because we've got some questions and we'll just kind of go into the after hour. I am so sorry.